Viking intimacy, rites and realities. The bridal chamber, brudus. Ritual construction, how the community prepared the sacred space. The brudus wasn't just a room, it was a temporary fertility temple. Construction began a week before the wedding, with each family contributing specific materials. Married women brought blessed linen, while men provided sacred oak wood. The chamber was set up in a separate location from the main longhouse, usually facing east, where the rising sun symbolized new beginnings. The whole community took part, singing ancient fertility songs during the building process. Hidden symbols, fertility runes carved into the beams. Hidden within the wooden beams, specific runes were carved by vulvas, wise women. The Berkana rune, fertility, was essential, along with Ingwaz, the god of male fertility. Some beams held entire sequences of runes forming secret enchantments. Modern archaeologists have discovered fragments of such beams with inscriptions like "May Thor bless this womb" and "May Freya bring many children." It was literal magic carved into architecture. The first night, rituals to ensure prosperity and offspring. The wedding night followed a specific script. First, the couple drank mead brewed with fertility herbs. This is the origin of the term honeymoon. The bride wore a special belt with amulets which could only be removed by her husband. Bed sheets embroidered with fertility symbols covered the bed. The next morning, elder women inspected the sheets, not out of voyeurism, but to confirm the union was consummated and the gods approved. The bride's previous menstrual blood was mixed into the room's soil to ensure future fertility. Sexuality as power. Freya and Cider magic. How the goddess of love influenced intimacy. Freya wasn't just the goddess of love. She was the patron of Cider, a form of sexual magic. This mystical practice involved using sexual energy to foresee the future, heal illness, and influence destiny. Women who mastered Cider could bind men sexually or release their virility. In the Viking mindset, this was real magic. Cider rituals included erotic dances, rhythmic chants, and even ritual orgasms to channel divine power. Freya taught that sexual pleasure was literally a form of magical power. Fertility amulets, magical objects found at archaeological sites. Archaeologists have uncovered phallic amulets made of bronze, iron, and amber in Viking graves. Small Thor's hammers were used as symbols of virility. Mjolnir also represented the erect male organ. Women carried vulva-shaped amulets, often made from gold and amber. Some bore runic inscriptions, asking for strong children or abundant pleasure. The most remarkable finds, double amulets symbolizing sexual union, discovered in the graves of couples buried together. Virility as status, why sexual performance defined leadership. For Vikings, impotence wasn't just a personal issue, it was a political disqualification. Leaders who failed to satisfy their wives lost public respect. Some Jarls were literally deposed due to rumours of impotence. The logic was simple. If a man couldn't lead in bed, how could he lead in battle? There were even secret endurance contests among young warriors. Tales of great leaders always included references to their sexual prowess. It was explicit political propaganda. What was allowed, accepted practices in Viking society. Viking society was far more open about sexuality than one might expect. Unlike Christianized societies of the same era, Vikings viewed sexual pleasure as something natural, necessary, and even sacred. Premarital sex, for instance, was not only tolerated, but considered part of the courtship process. As long as the relationship eventually led to marriage, intimacy beforehand was seen as a legitimate step toward commitment. Polygamy was also a permitted practice, especially among the wealthy or influential. A man could have multiple wives or concubines, provided he could support them and ensure their protection. This practice helped strengthen political and family alliances and was seen as a sign of power and prestige. Masturbation was approached directly, without taboo or guilt. It was regarded as a healthy expression of human desire, something that kept the body balanced and the mind focused. There were no religious or moral restrictions that repressed this practice. Oral sex between couples was common and socially accepted. There was no shame attached to such acts, which were seen as legitimate expressions of affection, pleasure, and spiritual connection. Viking culture understood the body as a channel of divine energy, and exploring its pleasures was a way of honoring the gods of fertility. One of the most striking expressions of this freedom was ritual nudity. During fertility festivals, such as those dedicated to Freya or Njordmen, and women would undress in collective outdoor rituals. Nudity carried no sense of shame, but rather of purity, connection with nature, and surrender to the sacred. In some cases, participating nude in these rites wasn't just allowed, it was mandatory. Failing to do so could be seen as an offense to the gods. Sexuality, to the Vikings, was an integral part of life, just as important as war or the harvest. Unlike the sinful view later imposed by Christianity, the Norse saw sexual pleasure as a divine gift, something to be celebrated, respected, and shared with honor. What was forbidden? Behaviors that led to exile. Despite their openness in many aspects of sexuality, Viking society had strict rules to protect honor, order, and the spiritual balance of the community. Certain behaviors were not only condemned, they were seen as direct threats to social stability and the goodwill of the gods. Rape, for example, was considered one of the gravest crimes within the Viking world. If committed against a woman from the community, punishment was swift and severe, either execution or permanent exile. The offender was marked as a threat to collective honor and as someone who brought shame to his bloodline. Sexual violence wasn't just a violation of the victim, it was seen as a direct offense to the gods who guarded life and fertility. Female adultery was also harshly punished. A married woman caught in infidelity could be banished, publicly shamed, or even executed, depending on the circumstances and her social status. Interestingly, male adultery was often tolerated, especially if the man was a noble or a warrior, revealing a moral hierarchy that, while unequal, was widely accepted at the time. Sex with animals was an absolute taboo. Considered an abomination against nature and the gods, it was punished by drowning, which was seen as a form of purification through the element of water. This transgression was treated with extreme severity, as it was believed to spiritually corrupt the land and endanger the entire community. Incest was another clear boundary. Relationships between relatives up to the fourth degree of kinship were forbidden by both law and tradition. Beyond genetic risk, such unions were thought to disturb the natural balance of family bloodlines and potentially result in cursed offspring. One particularly symbolic prohibition involved the honor of warriors. Seducing or having relations with the wives of men away on raids or in battle was considered a betrayal equivalent to military desertion. It was a double dishonor to the woman, to her household, and especially to the warrior, who trusted his community while risking his life abroad. To the Vikings, breaking these taboos was not just a personal offense, it was a danger to everyone. Violating these sacred boundaries was believed to provoke the wrath of the gods, bringing curses, poor harvests, illness, or even defeat in battle. Enforcing these laws wasn't just justice, it was divine duty. Viking homosexuality, a complex and misunderstood reality. Male homosexuality did exist in Viking society, but it came with strict rules. Being penetrated was considered feminine and dishonorable, led to a loss of social status. However, being the penetrator preserved one's masculinity. Some famous warriors had young male lovers without losing respect or reputation. For women, lesbian relationships were more accepted, especially among Velva's female seers who practiced magic together. Double female graves containing identical artifacts suggest romantic relationships between them. It was a society that acknowledged sexual diversity, but always within specific hierarchies of power and gender roles.